a 3-hour radius of Montreal, and then some places in northern Quebec. I mean, you can't do that really in many of the other provinces.
Now, you didn't tour in Quebec with the release of Haven't We Met?
I did, yeah.
But was it later or?
It was right after the release. The release was February,
right?
And I toured all of the end of February and all of March.
Okay.
Yeah, all over Canada.
Now, do you see how that affects sales and affects interest and more work?
Sure.
Like
I mean, it's people who might have heard you once on the radio, and or their friend gets tickets to the show, and they bring their friend who's. This is my favorite thing when I'm out signing autographs after the show, which I love to do because I love meeting people, and I'll stay there for however long it takes because I absolutely love meeting all these people who've bought tickets to my show. And the classic thing is somebody will come up and they say, "Oh, I brought my friend to your show and she's not a jazz fan." They go, "No, I didn't like jazz at all. I didn't think I liked jazz at all, but I love you." I say, well, jazz, I mean, that word, it covers a pretty broad spectrum of things, You've got bop to, your sort of free jazz. And it's like, I don't know what people are expecting, like a 10-minute long drum solo. It's a very accessible kind of music, and I think people know more of these American songbook standards than they even think, they do. So I love that when that happens. And so then that person's, liable to come to another concert or to maybe buy a record, one of my earlier records, and that's how it goes.
Now, do you finance all your projects, or do you? And you don't go through the granting system, or?
No, well, actually, I've taken advantage of Factor for some showcasing
but not for the body of the recording.
Not up until now. Not for any of the records that I have out.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's. I actually don't really know why I haven't taken advantage, so I think I will. But no, it's. I started my own record company, and really my company, which is Empress Music Group, it's not just a record company, but it's my company that everything runs through. I do a lot of voiceover work. I do a lot of voices for animation.
No, the voiceover helps pay for the recording.
Sure. Well, it all does. But over the last couple of years, have been a turning point for me in my career as a touring, recording and jazz musician, where I have made money, and my goal has always been to have a career. I want to have a career, and I want to have control of my career.
You sound like Lorena McKenna.
Oh, do I? Well, I take that as a compliment.
Absolutely.
I mean, she's known as a businesswoman, and I mean,
she's the blueprint, boy. Yeah,
I have a lot of respect for people who have control of their careers. I want to be it's not about being a control freak. I think some people can put that slant on it. For me, I want to choose the material I do. I want to choose the musicians I work with. I want to choose which shows I want to do, which shows I don't want to do, and I don't want to be in debt to somebody. And
you want to get paid.
Yeah, I mean, and it's I've been to the Junos several times and other functions, and again, being in this business for a decade or so, you get to know the major players, from the remaining record company guys to the agents to distributors, and I noticed that when I was at the Junos in Calgary a couple of years ago, it was all the same guys, like all the same faces, all the same publicists, managers, agents, but pretty much a whole new crop of artists. Mm-hmm. And that was really telling to me. I don't want to be, just sort of another artist that people try to break, and they want you to do a crossover to adult contemporary radio, and then you get sort of the power of that record company clout behind you, which can thrust you, no doubt, forward. But I've seen too many people sort of do this quick rise and fall, and
It's usually one shot.
yeah,
You get the one-shot album, and then you're tied to a deal.
you do a second album, maybe it doesn't do so well.
You're not getting the marketing.
You're dropped, and I'm not interested in that. I it's always been slow and steady for me, and it's working for me. And again, I live and die by my own decisions,
And your record sales have far exceeded most people on labels anyway.
Well, yeah,
In this music.
Yeah, and you have to, once you look at SoundScan every week and you realize, I think, my husband, he's my number one cheerleader, and he's a musician as well. He writes music for film and television, Daniel LeBlanc, and he's really a good business person too, and he's taught me a lot about business. And he always says, people always look at the best case scenario when you're making a record, when you're thinking about proposing a plan to make a record. People tend to always look at the best case scenario, which is pretty difficult to achieve. Meaning you make this record, you spend a bunch of money on the record, you spend a bunch of money on the marketing, and you sell, I don't know, 100,000 copies. I mean, that's almost impossible to achieve.
Yes,
if you look at the SoundScan that comes out every week, and I know you do, probably.
Look at the Ejazz sales.
Look at the Ejazz sales. That's the only one I will look at either. And, there's the top 5 people.
Michael Bublé,
Diana Krall, Nora Jones. Who am I forgetting here? When Barbra Streisand put her record out. And it's almost unfair to even count those people because... And don't take that out of context, because they're absolutely jazz artists, and they're absolutely deserve to be on the chart, and they're selling records. But we're talking about in a big American, these are exceptions to the rule. I mean, Michael Bublé is clearly, he's selling a lot of records. He's got pop singles on the radio.
Well, we've got a chart that has 100, and 5 of them are the big ones.
Right.
95%.
95, yeah. And I mean, after those top 3, where you're selling, a few thousand, let's say, in a good week, it drops down to
Hundreds.
90 units. I mean, you can make it in the top 100 if you sell 16 records one week. So that's reality. And you got to figure out, can I recoup my money if I'm selling 16 records a week? And if you're selling 16 records, you're in the top 100 in Canada. Can you recoup your money and make some money based on that?
Not a chance.
Right. So again, it's not about being a negative Nelly. It's not about being, saying why bother. You should bother, but you should think it through, and you should make a plan that makes sense, and look at what's the worst case scenario. I make this record, I don't sell any. You don't always reap where you sow. Maybe you start touring and you work grassroots, but I think it's easy to get sort of swept up in the kind of romantic side of it, and
not see
really practically. If you want to make a business out of this, if you want to have a career out of this, you have to look at it in a realistic way. So.